Again to the student of the game. I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game, and here, if you're here, chances are you like talking about sport, and we're glad you're doing it with us here today. Listen, a whole lot of craziness went on since the previous edition of the student of the game. Monumental coach firings and retirings and partings and things, as it was Pete Carroll, happened during the student of the game NFL awards, and then more happened after that. And there's just so much to get into, not just with that, but in the college ranks and things happening. And listen, this is the guy I'm bringing in to help me get through all that, who not only helps me with the work I do on the black and gold Banneret, but also is a guy I used to listen to on the radio driving to work every day, and now I get to do shows with him. Still blows my mind every time, but enough blowing his skirt up here. Eric Lopez, what's going on, guy?
Well, it's cold. Granted, it's cold everywhere. So this is kind of wild, but I'm doing good. I have some mixed feelings because I always start getting a little sad this weekend because it's divisional playoff weekend, which I would argue is one of the best weekends of the year when it comes to the NFL. But at the same time, it's like, oh, no, we're already in the divisional weekend, which means the season's almost over.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Ponda. That being said, the college basketball connoisseur that you are, you can help us get caught up with that as we start to find something to deal with our football withdrawals. But speaking of withdrawals, a number of teams now withdrawn from the postseason, including your Dolphins. I know that the biggest scuttlebutt going into the game were key defensive elements being on the field still in Week 18. There's been a lot of Dolphin hate among that, and then just things going on. But what is your current state? I mean, it's not like they were awful against the Chiefs, but it's kind of hard to gauge them in their playoff game, considering that it was so cold. Going back to weather, right? It was so cold. There were videos, TikToks of water bottles being taken out of a fridge and then freezing solid in someone's. It is colder literally than a fridge in the air. And they still played the game at Arrowhead, all of that. So, again, not prepared to really put this as an opportunity for the Dolphins, your Dolphins, to put their best foot forward. But how would you evaluate how they did this season?
It was a good season. It was an entertaining season, but it left you with a bad taste in your mouth as if you're a Dolphin fan. Because at the end of the day, you didn't win a division that you were up 3 games at one point, and you still didn't win a playoff game. So another season where now you have the longest drought without a playoff win because the Lions won a playoff game for the first time in 30-some years. So now the Dolphins have that streak. So yay! The game that's going to haunt the Dolphins. We can talk about the Chiefs' loss. We can talk about the Bills' loss. There's been a lot of talk about that, the Ravens' loss and all that. The loss that put them in this spot was the Titans' loss.
Sure.
Monday Night Football way before that, where they were up 2 touchdowns. Granted, they hadn't played well, but the Titans had literally handed them 2 touchdowns on turnovers, and there's about 4 minutes left in the game. I remember that was the weird. Remember, there was 2 Monday night games that night, so
yes.
I kind of took a peek at the Giants-Packers game to see what was going on because I'm thinking, all right, Dolphins are in pretty good shape this game. Next thing I know, the Titans score a touchdown like in about a minute, go for 2, and they score. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Dolphins go 3 and out. Titans come back and score, and you look back, if the Dolphins win that game, Kyle, the Dolphins still win the division. So the Bills game at the end of the year doesn't matter as much.
Right.
Which means they would have hosted Pittsburgh because they would have been the 2. And I think without TJ Watt, I think Miami beats Pittsburgh.
Without TJ Watt and with Mason Rudolph.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that's the matchup you wanted. That was whoever got Pittsburgh, with all due respect to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, you won the lottery. That was the matchup you wanted, either if you were Buffalo, if you were KC, or if you were the Dolphins. And Miami might still be playing this weekend against Buffalo or KC, maybe at home. So the season would have a completely different narrative, but it happened. They imploded in that game, and that started the swoon in December, even though they did win a game after that. But they were never the same. The injuries obviously caught up with them. Yeah. They had, 6, 7 guys out on defense, including literally all their pass rushers, which for a Vic Fangio defense, if you don't have pass rushers, you're no good, and the media, the national media doesn't focus on stuff like that, but that was a big blow. And, offensively, Jalen Waddle got hurt.
Yeah.
Mostert got hurt, as you know very well. That's why we're and then Tua, as a result, struggled because of that. And hey, here's breaking news, Kyle. A young man from Hawaii who played quarterback in Alabama and Miami struggled in the cold. What do you know?
Well, and then also too, Tyreek Hill with his battles through getting nicked up.
Sure.
Never actually missed full time, but I don't know if he was even 100% or what percentage he was at. And certainly
he got hurt in that Titan game. He was where he got hurt.
I mean, and by the way, if you want to talk about woes involving the Titans, hey, at least the team that you follow was in the playoffs. The Titans made sure that I didn't have that opportunity. So we don't have to have that conversation about the Titans, Eric Lopez.
True. Yeah, tough, rough stretch. Who would have thought that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers be the last team standing in the state of Florida?
I'm glad you brought that up. You transitioned nicely to a point I was going to make. You mentioned getting the lottery with the Steelers. Listen, the Bucs, even though you're traveling to sunny, hey, Tampa Bay, to battle the Buccaneers, that's supposed to be the draw you want, and yet the Eagles, whoops. I say all that to say I picked the Bucs in last week's editions of the Student of the Game podcast to win that football game, but I mean, how surprised were you to see the Eagles and Nick Sirianni fall there?
A little, but not a lot. I mean, this collapse has gone on 6 weeks for the Eagles. I mean, it seems like, and I watched the telecast with Buck and Aikman, and Troy Aikman was crushing them. They were basically saying this team is something's wrong with this team. Something's gonna happen with this team. There's going to be changes. I mean, the missed tackles. Mm-hmm. I mean, they look like a team that didn't want to be there, which you normally don't see that from an NFL team. You see that from an NBA team, when they've given up on a coach or maybe even, things like that. Or college, sometimes you see that, but not in the NFL, not in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've never seen an NBA playoff team like quit per se like that either. I mean, I'm saying it's never happened. The East has sent plenty of playoff teams with losing records. I can see a scenario where that could take place, but yeah, never anything like this in the NFL. A fine point that you draw there as well. I also feel compelled to mention, and we alluded to this a little bit on the Student of the Game report on the Earnestly Speaking podcast. Bing! But hey, your point about the Finns and the Titans missing the opportunity, but also I said on there, having some interaction and having spoken to Sirianni in person, I think now 2 years ago, last year in Phoenix. It's not that I think he's bad at football. He says all the things that I think make sense for a guy, but he did strike me as being extraordinarily young. And this is a guy who, if things are starting to fall downhill, I don't know that he would be my first choice to be able to turn it around.
Well, the mistake he did, changing defensive coordinators midway through the season and bringing him and putting Matt Patricia. Yeah. Matt Patricia, like the defense. I wonder if that's part of the reason. I remember watching the telecast and they were saying about how that's a big adjustment and everything. Like it looked like the defense just didn't want to play for this guy. And you look at Matt Patricia's recent track record; it's not been pretty at all.
No.
And you wonder, the Eagles did lose both of their coordinators from last year in the Super Bowl, right? Because you got the Colts. The offense coordinator went to Indianapolis. They lost it. Yeah, and then the defense coordinator left as well to be a head coach. And maybe that was too much. Who knows? But we weren't saying that when they were 10-1. I think there was some internal strife. It's going to be interesting what they do because what strikes me is a lot of Eagle fans don't like Nick Sirianni, and people keep pointing back to his introduction of his press conference that he didn't really win the presser, if you will. Right. And you're right. I think you make a great point. He's very young, but in today's climate, nobody allows a coach to grow. It's kind of like if you screw up, we're probably going to get rid of you. Look, so it's the Eagle thing was fascinating from that standpoint. I mean, we basically watched their implosion complete on Monday night on national television, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers benefited from it and took advantage of it to their credit.
And speaking of benefits, the Detroit Lions benefit potentially here after a 1-point victory over the Rams. They'll be hosting the Buccaneers up there in Detroit And even though somebody may embarrassingly ask how the Bucks will prepare for the cold in an indoor stadium,
it had to be a news person, right? Like that wasn't a sports person. It had to be a news person.
All I know is it was an oppressor. That's all I can tell you.
Because you know how you've been to many of these pressers where, especially when it gets to like these big events, there's people that aren't around and you're like, who's this person? And then you realize maybe they're not in the sports department. They're probably got sent as the news department and they don't know any better.
Your research would cue them up better. I mean, but that being said, I feel like that's a mistake I'm perfectly capable of making if I'm not paying attention. And I'll leave all of that aside. But that all being said, that game with the Rams and the Lions, listen, I said it back in July last year going into the season that the NFC West is among the more confusing to diagnose. I had the Rams barely missing the playoffs, yet here we are on the basis of a 1-point win holding the tiebreak over Seattle, supplanting Seattle to get in that 7th spot. And then again, on the obverse, 1 point below, 1 point short, 2 points away from beating the Lions. Rumors of John Matthew Stafford's demise, just overly stated. And then Puka Nacua, what they're doing, he had a battle for offensive rookie of the year in a year that didn't feature CJ Stroud. More on that later. But yeah, just the Lions doing amazing things. And you mentioned winning a playoff game already. Madden Campbell is doing the job, right? Right. Last time he was a coach was for your Dolphins, matter of fact.
Correct. And, they played hard for him. By the way, thank goodness for Detroit and the Rams. That was the only good game we got. It's an interesting game. That was a blowout. I mean, everybody was imploding all over the place. First of all, Sean McVay did a heck of a job coaching. I mean, you mentioned Puka Nacua. That was a great draft pick. The Rams had a great draft. I mean, they kind of rebuild on the fly. Matthew Stafford showed off why he is a super freak of a talent of a quarterback that I think actually should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, the guy is produced. He's won a Super Bowl. I mean, some of the throws he makes is incredible. Kyron Williams, talented running back. I think the Rams are going to be heard from moving forward. They just need a couple things. But give Detroit credit. They held on defensively. Their red zone defense was the key. The Rams didn't score touchdowns in the red zone. The Lions did. And that was the difference in the ball game there. And to get that win at great home field advantage, Ford Field was loud. I expect to be super loud against Tampa Bay. I'll be curious if, Jared Goff played a clean game. I think that's the key with Detroit. If Jared Goff plays a clean game, Detroit can beat anybody. If he doesn't, he turns the ball over to the opponent, they're going to lose. And I think that's the key with this Tampa Bay game is can Todd Bowles and the Bucs defense put some pressure on Jared Goff and force him to make some turnovers, because the Lions did a good job protecting Goff against Aaron Donald and the Rams and the defense there. Can the Bucs put some pressure on him like they did against Jalen Hurts? To me, that's a big factor in that game, because I think Tampa Bay can move the ball on Detroit, assuming the receivers actually catch the ball.
Assuming they can stop Aiden Hutchinson from making it difficult for
that too. Yeah, that's true. So I think it's an interesting game Sunday for both sides, because you realize, the winner's going to play for the NFC title, which I don't think either fan base thought that back in August. Maybe, I know there was some Lions buzz. Certainly the Buccaneer fans didn't think that. That's for sure.
It's on the board. How likely it is a separate question, but it's on the board that the Detroit Lions could be hosting Conference Championship Sunday. Now, granted, that would involve the Green Bay Packers supplanting the 49ers. Listen, call me a homer all you want. The Cowboys thought to themselves, hey, listen, I know the way we can avoid getting eliminated by the 49ers this year in the playoffs again. Let's just bail out now. Whee! The Packers.
Boy, did they ever. That was what a crash party there. Hey, look, let's go. I got to apologize to Green Bay. They nailed it with Jordan Love, right? Like, I mean, that's a young group there that's pretty fun to watch. Jordan Love is.
This is what the saying, it takes 3 years to develop a player out of the draft means, right? When's the last time you can think of a quarterback has had time to develop like this? Like maybe Alex Smith? I don't know.
Well, it's funny, and people wonder, why are the Packers so successful at the quarterback room?
All right, yeah, I meant Pat Mahomes. Beg your pardon.
Patrick Mahomes a year. Well, Mahomes, I think, was a year. I don't even think he was 3 years. He sat for a year.
To
your point, to your point, This is why Green Bay gets the quarterback right? Like everybody's on it, man. How are they lucky, man? Favre, Rodgers, now Love. What the? Well, because they're patient where nobody else is. Everybody's like, we got to play the rookie quarterback by week 5. We got to play by week 6. Like, like the Titans are playing Will Levis, like already. Like what? You know what they did? You know what that did to Mike Vrabel? It got him fired. So part of the reason. So
I mean, in fairness, injuries put Will Levis in place. Like if it wasn't for Tannehill and Malik Willis getting hurt, that there's that whole situation. But I mean, listen, morons like me were calling for Kenny Pickett to start immediately in Pittsburgh, and look where that gets them. A franchise, by the way, that's known for that same patience that you're talking about. Need I remind everybody about Mike Tomlin's record, right? But yeah, no, I think that's a point that we aren't talking enough about as media people in general, is patience finally playing off in a culture that's so me now. I think great point.
And that's it. And the Jordan Love is perfect because if you see some of the throws Jordan Love makes, they're very similar to Rodgers and Favre. There was a clip on social media where they showed a Brett Favre touchdown from the mid-90s against Dallas where he rose to his right and throws. Looked exactly like Jordan Love's touchdown against Dallas on Sunday. And that was big. And give credit to the Packers coaching staff and LaFleur for developing him, during this process. And regardless of what happens to Green Bay Saturday night against San Francisco, their future is very bright. With Love and the young receivers. They got a bunch of first and second year receivers. Christian Watson hasn't even been healthy this year. So I think the Packers are headed in the right direction, regardless of where they're going. Scoreboard, Packers 1, Aaron Rodgers 0.
Well, and again, on the technicality of getting hurt for snaps in, but this concept I'll introduce to you. In your mind, do you see the Packers having a hand in Mike McCarthy's next firing?
Yes.
Really? Okay. And
I think so. I think because you look at the what's out there. This is like the who's who of coaching. You don't see this every off season. Like, yes, you have always turnover in the coaching circles with firings, but you don't see like top Hall of Fame caliber coaches like Bill Belichick available. Pete Carroll's available. Jim Harbaugh could be available, right? Mike Vrabel's a really good coach, available. Like, if you're Jerry Jones and you're in your 80s, you don't know how much time you got left, and you want to try to win a Super Bowl. Do you really want to mess around with Mike McCarthy, who got absolutely embarrassed and outcoached on Sunday? Like, that Cowboy team had no idea what hit him. There was no adjustments. I get it. He's won a lot of games with Dallas, 12 games each year. But my goodness. If you're going to strike, if you're Jerry Jones and Dallas, this probably is the time to do it, because if you stick with McCarthy and you get bounced again next year, you may not have this list of coaches to pick from again. Now you could argue who's a fit there and who could fit with Jerry's ego, but this is going to be one of the most fascinating off seasons from a coaching carousel that I can remember in the NFL. I don't know. You tell me. You remember a carousel like this?
Oh, hell
these type of names? I mean, it's unbelievable.
About it. Yeah, that's. I mean, two people with the term GOAT attached to their names, and Pete Carroll. Now, granted, Pete Carroll is staying in Seattle. I'm fairly certain that's a health issue that we just haven't heard about yet. And if that's the case, Godspeed to him. Of course, I'm not the biggest Pete Carroll fan, but I do wish him better health and the ability to keep coaching and doing all that. I think he's better in the league. But for my money, listen, I know that they're in Big D, so to speak. Bill Belichick is the name everyone's talking about. I personally think Jim Harbaugh is the better fit. I do.
Could be. I'm a Jim Harbaugh guy. You don't have. I mean, I'm a Jim Harbaugh guy. I am very happy he won the national title at Michigan. He pretty much retired Nick Saban, which is great. I enjoyed that, and I'm glad he shut a lot of critics out.
I think that has more to do with the era of subdivisions upcoming. But
for sure. Well, yeah, what's going on? But like I said, the fact that his last game is a loss to Jim Harbaugh is hilarious to me.
Yeah, when I saw them in person, Saban got the better of that one, but Harbaugh's revenge is the national championship, and if you don't like it, go eat a hamburger. Anyways, Yeah, we'll wrap up with CJ Stroud crushing the adorable engine that could with in the Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco doing Joe Flacco things, and that Browns defense having possibly their single worst game of the season against a Texan squad that was probably the healthiest it's been in a minute, and did a fantastic job. I mean, what more can you say about CJ Stroud and the Texans, Elo?
Well, first of all, the Browns just, they were Browners. They just did what they always do, which I can relate as a Dolphin fan. So I'm not taking shots. I'm just being real.
It's the facts. These are these. I still have Stefanski as my coach of the year over D'Amico.
Really? Okay. Right, yeah. I don't have an issue either way there on that. Look, the Texans, I mean, speaking of a team that should be excited about their future, I mean, CJ Stroud, you saw him in person, and I asked you this. What did you think of him, and could he be the guy in that division and not Trevor Lawrence? If I'm a Jaguar fan, I'm nervous.
Well, if you're a Jaguar fan that I've seen, you already think that's the case. Regardless of whatever the offensive line situation there is in Duval, you're blaming everything on Trevor Lawrence. At least that's what Twitter would have me believe, right? But yeah, listen, we've already said on the Duval dive, me and my guy Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country, bing, that we expect to see CJ Stroud for at least 10 more games over the next 5 years, because twice a year, right? Whether at Everbank or NRG, and then probably beyond that too, because unless some sort of catastrophe or slump happens, he's going to get the bag. And I feel like he's done better earlier on with a first-time NFL head coach than Trevor.
That offensive coordinator, let's keep him in mind. He's going to be a future head coach, Bobby Slowick, another guy from that Washington staff from a decade ago with Mike Shanahan that is, blossomed in the league. It's just crazy.
I mean, I see another former 49er coordinator, but you do it your way. That's fine.
Fair. But they always show the Washington tree, which is always interesting.
Of course. It involves the guy's son. I get it.
Isn't it amazing, though, that CJ Stroud, and they got Will Anderson in that draft, the Texas,
who is both, by the way, both student of the game, offensive and defensive players of the year. I don't know if you know this, Eric Lopez, represented by the Texans according to the student of the game. So there you go.
And it just blows your mind. Isn't this how this is so scary about the draft? Everybody wants the number one pick. CJ Stroud went behind Bryce Young, and look at the differences in the seasons. And I remember the Stroud game in the college football playoff for Ohio State against Georgia. That's what won me over about Stroud. Because I think prior to that, people are like, oh, he's in the Big Ten. Like, what? He's like nobody's, Boy, he lit up that Georgia defense that had a ton of pros. And he's so cool, and he's so calm, and he's big, and he just has that arm. And they've done a good job surrounding him with good talent. I mean, heck, he doesn't even have Tank Dell, who's out for the year. Wait till they get him back next year.
Yeah.
And if you're Carolina, woo, that's a big whiff, man. Because when I see Bryce Young, I see a small guy. And if you're small, you better be accurate or fast. And I don't know if Bryce is either. So they may have to live with that wacky owner, Dave Temper. But CJ Stroud, Houston's here to stay. And, you look at the AFC South, which people like to make fun of. CJ Stroud. I still am a Trevor Lawrence believer.
Oh, I am too.
All right. Let's get the young man some help. With the offensive line, or et cetera. Get healthy. Indianapolis with Richardson. We'll see what Levis. There's some young kids all of a sudden in this league, in this division, in this AFC South here that we might see for years.
I mean, when you put it in there, if your worst quarterback in your division is a young Will Levis, you're better off than a lot of divisions. That's just where I live. Maybe you don't have Patrick LaVon Mahomes II, but the bottom of that AFC West, who's the quarterback in Oakland? We don't know. I mean, yeah, sure, they had a guy taking snaps. We don't know if he's the future, and I think that stability, for lack of a better word, is superior right now in the
Look at the NFC South. Look at the NFC South. Derek Carr is not the long-term answer in New Orleans. Who's going to be the long-term answer in Atlanta? It's not Desmond Ridder. We just talked about the issues with Bryce Young. It's just 1 year. You hope that the next coach at Carolina fixes it, but with that owner, you don't know. And Baker obviously has had a very good year. He's probably going to get the bag from Tampa Bay, but how long is he the answer in Tampa Bay? Is he another year or two? Who knows?
Yeah, he's definitely patchwork. But what I was going to say is Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in the NFC South. Who the hell had that? I don't know what to make of it all. And after the failed experiment in Carolina and all that too, over and above. But anyways, a couple things want to go over too. Of course, we mentioned Bill Belichick stepping away, getting interviews from the Carolina Panthers. We mentioned Jim Harbaugh. Not Carolina, I'm sorry, the Atlanta Falcons. I beg your pardon. We mentioned Jim Harbaugh also getting last night, apparently, an interview with the Falcons we hear about, and then also talking to the Los Angeles Chargers, former San Diego, like I like to call them. We talked about this carousel and its elitism. Do you feel like those existing is why we hear more scuttlebutt? Like, we talked about Sirianni in Philly getting some hot seat talk. Even Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh is getting some hot seat talk. We don't hear that if that carousel isn't what it is right now, right?
Oh, absolutely. Every team is rethinking what they have as a coach because of what there's out there. That's the point. And I think that's why people are curious to see what's going to happen here in the next week or two, in the next few days as we talk. Because, again, you've got Bill Belichick, who's motivated by the fact that he wants to break Don Shula's record. And I think he's motivated by the fact that he wants to win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady because his legacy's taken a hit here the last few years because Brady won without him, and he has struggled without Tom Brady. And now he's going to – and that's why I would be surprised if he ended up in Atlanta. First of all, that would be weird. And they don't have a quarterback.
You speak to this though, Elo, as somebody who's a fan in the AFC East, it would be another easy division where he could step in a power vacuum and dominate.
If he can, well, with that talent, right, with the talent that they have there, Bijan Robinson and Pitts and London there, if he can get a quarterback there, you're right, get a quarterback, but that's easier said than done. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll take Arthur Blank's blank check and become the guy with the Falcons and wear black and red, and we just have this weird. It's going to be weird regardless of where he is. Sure. But a part of me wonders, Philly, Dallas, if that's available, is that the one that Bill prefers as a Northeast guy? That just makes me wonder, because both of those teams, have good rosters too. The Chargers, if somehow it falls through, because I think Harbaugh is going there. I've kind of felt that way. I don't think he has anything else to prove in college. I think he doesn't give a bleep about the NCAA. In fact, I think he hates their guts.
I don't think that's a giant leap there, bud.
Right. And so, you have Justin Herbert there, although they have cap issues with the Chargers do. So they got some work, but still they have a roster there that you could possibly win. So yeah, I'm really, this is a fascinating coaching carousel. You should be excited, Kyle, because you've got so much material in the coming weeks. Even though football games might be done, there's going to be a lot to talk about with all these moves because there's a rippling effect in a lot of ways. What if if Mike McCarthy's out there? He is attractive to somebody. He has won. He's not a bad coach. He's just not. I don't think he's elite. And think about it. He had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and he can only win one Super Bowl.
Well, that's a point that's made by a lot of people, but I could say the same thing about Mike Tomlin with, he's had the Steelers.
No, Mike, they've messed up the quarterback situation there. I don't think Kenny Pickett's the answer there. And they finally got rid of Matt Canada. It took him long enough. I mean, that's been part of the issue there with Mike there.
Well, and as I take that, as I make that criticism, I also have to remember that Mike Tomlin managed to navigate both Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and still have winning seasons consecutively for 17 years. So I think, let's not overdo that either too. But that being said, you did mention that football is in its twilight for the season. And you as a college basketball guy, listen, I know it's not March yet, but what are some of the big stories that we should be following college basketball? I mean, obviously the Big 12 is still amazing because, they're just a juggernaut. It would appear too that the only thing more of a juggernaut than Big 12 men's basketball is Big 12 women's basketball. But that's a whole other question, Eric Lopez. What are some of the big stories coming out of the college basketball landscape that we should be paying attention to?
A lot of parity, my friend. Unlike football, there's constant upsets all over the place.
Yeah.
And I got to witness it last week in person when it is an example when UCF knocking off Kansas. What? Huh? How does that happen? I mean,
who are
Kansas.
you covering that game for, Eric Lopez?
blackandgoldbanneret.com. Thank you very much. That was crazy. But you got the Big 12. You mentioned the Big 12. They're projected right now for 8 teams in the NCAA tournament. They got 8 teams ranked in the top 25. Hello.
Nuts. Yeah.
It's amazing. So you have that storyline with the Big 12, who's the premier league in the sport. You got Purdue, who has the best player in the sport. They're probably the best team in the sport, but they lost in the opening round of the NCAA tournament, one of the biggest upsets ever last year. So there's that unique question of what are they going to do in the NCAA tournament? Are they going to fall on their face again? Or are they going to have a redemption story like Virginia did a few years back? That's a storyline there with Purdue. You got UConn trying to go for repeat. You got Rick Pitino back in coaching that's trying to revive St. John's. They're in the Big East Conference. You got Kentucky. John Calipari's a fun team to watch all of a sudden. So there's a lot of intriguing storylines in college basketball because of the parity and all the movement. There's a lot of movement in college hoops with the NIL. And I think that's created part of that of more experienced teams and more balance around the board because everybody's moving. You know, it's tough to keep 12 guys happy there. So that's kind of some of the storylines to watch in college basketball. It's getting going. Obviously, it's the last year of the Pac-12 in college hoops as well. Arizona's a title threat. So there's about 10 to 12 teams that are could be teams that be national title favorites. Can FAU make another Cinderella run? They're finding things a little harder in the American than they did in CUSA. Oh, that's not that funny, Kyle, considering, UCF got criticized. Well, they struggle in the American. Well, that FAU's darling is also taking some lumps there, losing it to Charlotte, nearly losing to Tulane early on. Memphis, Penny Hardaway, he's got his best team there. That's a team to watch. Penny Hardaway.
He's been good for him. Right, yeah.
They've got a good team there in the American, too.
Still getting used to Penny Hardaway with a bald head, though, man. He looks weird without that damn flat top. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm struggling still. It's been 3 years. Anyways, enough about that. You want to do these picks for me real quick for a divisional weekend here, Elo?
You know it. Let's just cherish it, man. Like, this is the weekend where I literally just lock myself at home in the room and just take in these 4 games. Because, Chris Berman, I always said every year as I grew up, the best weekend of the year in the NFL usually. I don't know what he always said that. And enjoy it because next weekend we only have 2 games and then the Super Bowl is there, which all the bandwagon general people take over and it doesn't feel like a real NFL day. So it's kind of, I'm just
Taylor Swift waving at the sky.
Yeah. So let's just cherish this. Yeah, let's go. I'm ready.
With that in mind, something that's something that feels like an undercard for Saturday. Houston travels to Baltimore to battle Lamar Demetrius Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens.
If you can guarantee one thing is if the Texans are in the playoffs, they're playing on Saturday because that's where they always play. It seems like every time. Like maybe you could confirm this, Kyle, but if the Texans win, I've heard they might move the AFC title game to Saturday. That's if the Texans win. That's what we might do. Maybe they'll move the Super Bowl. If the Texans ever make the Super Bowl, they might actually move it to Saturday. I'm really fascinated by this because to me, this is about Lamar Jackson, who's going to probably win the MVP. Would you agree with that?
He's not my MVP, but yes, I believe the lamestream media will get that right. And not Dak Prescott.
The lame stream. That's good. I like that.
I got that from Jay Moore, actually. But
fair. I think this is about Lamar because who has struggled, granted, small sample size, not been great in the playoffs. You're at home. You're a heavy favorite against Houston. Come out and show that you're why you should be the MVP. I'm really intrigued by that because I think C.J. Stroud could give Baltimore some fits early. And if Houston, if Baltimore, if Lamar struggles early, things get a little tight. That's how you see upsets. That being said, I'm going to take Baltimore. This feels like a Harbaugh family year. Jim's won a national title. Now can John win his second? I think Baltimore wins this game, but I'm not going to dismiss the Texans in this one.
No, nor should you. The popular play is to take the Texans on the money line. Last I saw it was 9.5. I think that's a bit much, for sure. But really, for me, the safe bet in this game is the over. But I too have the Ravens winning the game. It's not that I'm disrespecting C.J. Stroud. Think Dak Prescott, the first time he was in a playoff game, he had done his part to win it. And then Aaron Charles Rodgers draws a play in the sand and does another Hail Mary to win the day. It's just, for me, it's just as simple as I think the Ravens will control the clock more and keep Stroud off the field more. Therefore, Lamar Demetrius Jackson will do his part to handle business. And that's no disrespect to the Texans. Listen, I was seen as an optimist and a believer in the Texans with 7 wins, and they pull this. This is amazing. No question. But speaking of amazing, the Packers return to San Francisco in a playoff round to battle the 49ers. Elo.
Rivalry, right? It's still rivalry. It feels like every other year they're playing in the playoffs, right? In many ways. I mean, I remember a few years ago when the Niners upset the Packers in Green Bay in that cold weather on the block kick touchdown, right?
And then the year before that, they beat them with, I think it was Brock Purdy throwing like what, 10 times, something like that?
Something like that. They've had many, many matchups over the years. Niners should win this game. They're healthy. They're best. I think they've been they're the best team. Well, I can't say they're the best team because Baltimore certainly took.
Baltimore's amazing. Let's take nothing.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Let's say the Niners lose this game. Is Kyle Shanahan safe? Is he safe?
He should be, in my opinion.
You sure?
Yeah.
With Jim Harbaugh out there.
I mean, I don't think Harbaugh's, well, that's a damn fine point. With Trent Baalke not in the building, I think he's safe. But if what you said would happen, I'd be happy about that mess. And we'll leave it at that.
Because that's my point, though. That's what I'm saying about this coaching offseason is fascinating. Yeah. Because it sounds like Kyle Shanahan's done a good job. It sounds ridiculous. But if the Niners don't get over the hump this year, if they lose this early, I think there's going to be some murmur there. And people are like, what the heck what is missing here? And when you have Jim Harbaugh, who did lead you to a Super Bowl and would argue was a PI away from winning that Super Bowl for San Francisco,
yes,
among others available, it makes you kind of think for a moment. Just think.
I get where you're going. And the only, I'll put it this way. Kyle Shanahan is starting to form up to be Marty Schottenheimer 2.0.
Oh,
so I get that, and that's not lost on me.
It's great. Wow, I like that comparison. That's a great comparison. That being said, I am taking the Niners because I think everybody loves Green Bay this week. Everybody, we're throwing them flowers. We're floundering with them. And we tend to do this in the NFL. We always get excited about the team that wins that wild card weekend. Man, watch out for that team. And forget that the top seed got it for a reason. I would think the Niners defense will put pressure on Jordan Love, and contain Aaron Jones, which Dallas had no prayer of doing with Dan Quinn. Christian McCaffrey still the best football player. Like, if you ask me, Christian McCaffrey probably should get more love as far as MVP talk. But
you got into the game MVP, no question.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with the Niners. I've stuck with them. I've picked them since August. I'm not bailing on them now. So I'm going to pick the Niners to beat Green Bay. But Green Bay scares me a little bit if I'm a Niner fan.
And they are a little scary. There's plenty to be said, but you already taken care of the fact that they're not running the football against the Niners effectively as they did against the Cowboys. And while I love what Jordan did, see what I did there, Elo, against the Cowboys, he's going to have to do a lot more. Yes. And be a lot more effective against the Niners. The play here is to take the Niners to win, but they're getting 9.5 points. That's entirely too many. Bet the Packers, but
I will say this: the Packer defense to me is still suspect. Something that Dallas didn't take advantage of until the game was already settled. I like to think the Niners will take advantage of that early.
Fair enough. I can't front on that. I mean, the Packers have a history of
You better win, man. If you don't, I could see your boy Rob Stats Guerrero on his show.
Oh, he'll lose his mind.
Oh, and Kyle, Mike. Oh boy, could be.
Listen. For every bit he talks smack on Jimmy Garoppolo, this dude is on the Purdy bandwagon. Not that I'm mad at it. It's just very interesting to see all the shots fired at Trey Lance and how big a mistake that was coming from that part of the world and how much he's now come to worship at the altar of Brock Purdy. And again, I'm not mad at him for it, but just make sure you throw some love to Trent Williams, the actual 49er MVP. Tampa Bay heads to Detroit. Elo, who you got?
I got Detroit. Feels destiny for them, right? To get to the end. I mean, this could not have drawn up better if you're a Detroit Lion fan. You get a Bucs team that you've beaten already, not the greatest of teams. Detroit has a strong running game. As long as Jared Goff protects the football, okay? And the Lions protect them from the Bucs' deep pass rush. I think Detroit wins this going away. I don't see Baker Mayfield having another monster game 2 weeks in a row, even though Detroit's defense is a little suspect. You made a great point earlier. I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to be a big problem for the Bucs offensive line. I think the Bucs should be proud of the season they've had. They've overachieved. But I think it's destined for Detroit with that running game and company. I think the Lions advance to the NFC title game.
Yeah, I can't diss that. I'm looking forward to the air quotes Jim Schwartz revenge game taking place without him being in either franchise. But no, it's clearly the Lions for my money. Listen, in a world where Damar Hamlin doesn't exist, Baker Mayfield is campaigning for a comeback player of the year. But listen, defying death itself kind of puts you out. I'm sorry, guys. Damar Hamlin gets it. But, yeah, Detroit, I think, advances for all of the reasons you mentioned, and Man Campbell bites more kneecaps. The premier matchup of the week, and I don't think it's close. The Kansas City Chiefs head to the former Ralph Wilson Stadium to battle the Buffalo Bills. Who circles the wagons, Elo?
You're right. This is the mark. I mean, Jim Nantz and CBS is just foaming at the mouth, right? 6:30 kicks. That's gonna be the most watched game of the weekend. That game's gonna draw big numbers. I mean, if that game is close, it wouldn't shock me if 50 million they cross 50 million. That could be in play. Mahomes, Allen, quarterback rivalry there.
50 million viewership for those.
Yeah, which is a monster. I mean, Dallas, I think, did 40 million on a wild card game, and that was a blowout. Man, this is such a fascinating game. Two teams that you just can't. You don't know who's showing up, right? Like, are the Chiefs receivers going to show up like they did against Miami with Rashee Rice? Their Chiefs defense is good. Is Josh Allen going to protect the football? Buffalo, the pressure is on Buffalo because they're the home team. They haven't won a Super Bowl. This is Patrick Mahomes' first road game. The thing that would worry me if I'm the Bills, people are going to count, Patrick Mahomes playing his first road game. I don't know. Man, this is going to be – I'm fascinated. This is a game I'm having the hardest time picking. I'm going to go Buffalo just because they're home. I don't trust the Chiefs receivers. I'm going to go Buffalo. I think it's Buffalo's time. They beat the Chiefs earlier this year in KC. That's why this game is in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I don't trust the Chiefs receivers. I just don't, Kyle. I just don't. And I think Buffalo with Cook, who killed the Chiefs in the first meeting, and Josh Allen will win. But I think this game should be a dandy, should be a touchdown game. But I'm going Buffalo.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great call by you. I matched Buffalo. I don't think there is a bad call whether you pick Chiefs or Bills on this one, frankly. Listen, the Chiefs are a defensive team now. I've been saying it for months. Eventually, Nick Wright caught up with me after I said it in week 2, seeing it personally in Everbank Stadium when they came to battle Jacksonville, who I was covering with the Jaguar Report and the 3-point conversion. Bing! So all of that to say, I think you're absolutely right. Both these teams have different identities than they have in the past. The weather looks to be relatively clear, but for me, I think it's a rather depressing week, or rather postseason for the Kelsey brothers. I think Travis Michael Kelsey heads home to watch the Super Bowl on the couch with Jason Daniel Kelsey. That's right. Brotherly 3-name treatment with a pair of Hall of Famers, Eric Lopez. That's what you're going to get on this show. I'll tell you what. Anyway.
Which running back has the better game? Pacheco for the Chiefs or Cook for Buffalo could play also, and who wins this game? I don't think you can win this game. Either team can win this game being one-dimensional.
I think Cook has the better game because
I agree.
I feel like for one, he's not coached by Andy Reid. That's a big part of it. 2, there are things that travel well. Defense and Patrick Mahomes II. I get it. But I just don't see Andy Reid handing that ball off to get out of that trouble. I think it's just the world he lives in. Anybody
It feels like it's going to end with a Chiefs drop pass that gets deflected into an interception that ends that's going to
almost like we've seen it before.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Eric Lopez, I know you got more work to do here shortly after this, so let's cut you loose, brother. Tell the world where you can be found.
Eric Lopez Elo on X/Twitter, if you want to call it there. Obviously, you do a lot of work at
drugs, folks. He's on social media. That's what he's trying to tell you.
That's
Eric
correct.
He's not on X, but he's on X. It's very confusing.
It's very confusing. I don't know if we'll ever fix that, but I do cover the blackandgoldbanneret.com. We have a lot of UCF coverage, football and basketball, and I call games on ESPN Plus for UCF softball. That gets going in less than a month.
Wow.
I do an In the Circle softball podcast as well. So I just wear a lot of different hats, Kyle Nash, but it's a good problem to have. And I always enjoy coming on the show and talking football, even though the Dolphins lost again. But I've been used to that since I was 6 years old, like for the last 35 years.
I was about to say, they've been doing it long before we've been born, my guy. And listen, and I take nothing from the softball coverage you do, nor anybody who exists in baseball, but I'm looking for the day where you're calling baseball games as well, so you can truly be the Sultan of stickball. Eric Lopez, an honor, joy, and privilege to have you aboard. Thank you a ton. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram and Threads as the same, the SOTG. Check me out on Facebook as the student of the game, and check out my writings on the Jaguar Report, the Black and Gold Banneret, the aforementioned, right? As well as the 3-point conversion, and my work covering the Orlando Magic with A7B.
Magic, baby, NBA.
We didn't have time to talk NBA, but who would after that beat down the
it's too long to talk about all the Magic injuries anyways.
That too, and the beat down from Minnesota coming to town and all that, but we'll get into that another time, Eric Lopez. We'll just have you back. We'll talk about your Heat and the Magic. It'll be a lot of fun. But listen, until next time, everyone, class dismissed.